Hello again, Duplicator i3 and clone users. Hot off the tail of my stepper tuner, we're going to go ahead and do the upgrade for the all-metal Hotend from Micro Swiss. Based on the forum feedback on this one, I was a little hesitant to do it. It seemed like it's caused as many problems as it fixed. I'm just hoping that we can figure out if that's true or if it's just really the users who are reporting feedback might have maybe exaggerated the condition, or maybe their issues were related to something else. Don't know. You know, everybody's mileage is a little bit different. So we're going to go ahead and follow through. I'm using Joel's video on how to do this, so thank you very much to Joel. I'm going to keep pushing through here. I've already done the first step. I've preheated the nozzle to 250 degrees, and I'm going to go ahead and remove this after I clear out I guess the rest of the filament that's in here. So I'm going to take a quick minute and empty out the rest of the filament by pushing my favorite key through. And this is going to get really hot really fast, so we'll try to be quick about this. It's always a matter of just kind of getting the key on the end there that you're pressing directly down on the filament. Now we are preheated to 250, so this should be going through like butter. And it pretty much is. There we go. Key's getting hot. And one of the mistakes I made early on is I pull up immediately. Give either key a second in there. I know it gets really hot really quick, but don't pull back immediately. What you end up doing is clogging the whole extruder pathway with the plastic that you're drawing up that might be stuck to the end of the key. Just how I do it. Again, I'm sure there are other ways to do it. Alright, we got a little bit better angle. I've got the Z-axis up to 37 millimeters, so it gives me a little more clearance to work here. And just like Joel said, I've got it preheated to 250 degrees. I'm going to take some channel locks, which I'm actually going to wrap in a little bit of a paper towel, as I don't want to really do any damage to this block here. I'm going to kind of come around here, being careful not to snag any of the wires on the other side here. I got a good grip. And we're going to get over the nozzle here with all 9 millimeters. And wouldn't you know, it doesn't fit. That does indeed say 9 millimeters. Oh, there we go. Gotta get my direction right, since I'm kind of looking at this backwards. There we go. Woo! That is very hot and very fast. Now that I've sort of gotten the edge off of that, I'm going to very carefully remove that. And yeah, you'll notice I'm holding it by the adapter here because the actual bit at this point is miserably hot. And we'll just pop that out there. Finish it off with a pair of pliers, and we are out. We're going to shut the machine off and let it cool down. Now that we've got that off, I went ahead and cleaned up the old nozzle, really just set it on my soldering iron, worked on it for a while. One of the tricks I've learned is whenever you're working on removing this extruder motor or doing anything with the extruder itself, go ahead and home it all the way to the right side. And what that does for you is it braces the extruder motor itself against the frame, so that when you remove these screws, it doesn't try to jump off of the actual plate or the mounting system here. So we're going to go ahead and remove these screws. And be real careful when you're doing this. Obviously, you don't want to put a lot of stress on the heating element or the actual temperature sensor in there. I'm going to kind of carefully unwind this all the way. And I'm just going to set it right on the bed here while I work on it. So now that we've got that done, I can go ahead and slide this back over and take the motor off and then disconnect it with its connector right here. So now that we've got the fan and extruder block off, I'm going to go ahead and get in here and remove the hot end. It's already a little loose there. There we go. Now we just need to remove this set screw and then very carefully take this down, and we're going to pull it out there. Now we're going to remove these two screws from underneath the extruder here. Now that the hot block is off, we can get to these pretty easily. There we go. There's one. Hey, look at that, no dropping. And number two is out. We're going to go ahead and remove the feeder tube here. So, as we were hoping, it's just a counterclockwise turn by hand. Didn't require any tools. You can see a little marring on there that I've had to use a tool before to get this one out. That was my first jam. And yeah, I had to do some cleaning on there. It's kind of nasty in there. Next, we're going to go ahead and take our new nozzle. We got the 0.4 millimeter. We're going to go all the way in and back 1/4 of a turn. Okay, we're all the way bottomed out. 1/4 turn back. Now it's time for the thermal barrier. So we're going to go ahead and put that in. And this is a full, screw it all the way in until it bottoms out. Pretty simple little part here, but very well machined. And we're in. Not too difficult there. We got that all installed. Time for our cooling block. This one actually takes a little bit more planning. We need to make sure that the little slot in it is pointing to the right side or towards where the extruder motor is going to be. And we're already keeping track of where our wires come out. So simply placing it on here. And we're all set for that part. Okay, now we're going to mount the thermal barrier tube inside the new cooling block. And the guide and the Micro Swiss site both say a 1.7 millimeter gap. There's no really good way to measure this that I've found, because you've got no access to the underside once this is in place. So it's kind of an eyeballing thing. 1.7 millimeters, not very thick. It's really just a very small bit sticking above. So what we're going to do is we're just going to sort of eyeball it. And it almost looks like it's just the amount of space that's on the end where it starts to taper back. So I'm going to bring that up to the taper here. And probably easier to get the key in first, but to get the key in, make sure everything's straight. And I'm using my thumb to sort of hold it against the hot block, against the cooling block. And then tighten that down. There, we've got that on. So now we're going to go ahead and mount this back to the extruder brace. So we slide this back on now that we've got it put together. And now we're going to get a better angle. Now we're going to go ahead and mount the cooling block back onto the extruder arm here. Just kind of get those two little screws that you took out in the last step. And carefully pop those back in. And it feels backwards since we're upside down here. And of course, anytime you're working with aluminum, you just want to make sure you're not cross-threaded. So you want to back it out just a little bit and then tighten it down. You never want to torque hard on this. It's good. And then I'll move this over a little bit. But this block is pretty well flush with the metal edge. So that's how you know you've got it lined up properly. Now we're going to put the stepper motor and the heatsink back on. Now I went ahead and I bought the upgraded lever here. So you'll see that that's been installed on the stepper motor itself. I also printed a different block and just installed that so that I could handle some more of the flexible type filaments. And really all it is it's got this this little wedge here that keeps the filament from being able to exit the pathway. So we'll see how that works. Haven't gotten a chance to use it yet, violating one of the main rules, which is never do two things at once. But hey, what fun is life if you don't violate the rules every now and then? So first I'm going to go ahead and connect the motor back on. And we'll set it in place. Like I said before, whenever I'm working on this kind of thing, I want to move it all the way over and brace it against this far edge. That keeps you from dropping your motor. When you're putting this back on, make sure that the flat part of your heatsink is going to be against your cooling block. At one point in the past, I had it backwards, and I didn't realize it for a few prints, and I was definitely having temperature control issues. Do some cable routing while I'm in here. Make sure this is all tucked back in there nicely. fact, I'm going to reroute this fan. Or reroute this fan cable sort of back behind there. There we go. Tucked it behind the actual thermistor cable so it'll hold in place. Can't say enough great things about these Bondus ball hex drivers. There's a couple of bucks you have to spend, and obviously if you can do the Hotend upgrade, you might have the couple of bucks. Kick onto Amazon, grab a set of these things, and be happy about how many times you don't end up dropping your bolts while you're working. You can also get in and place them at angles, so this really helps to be able to install things when you don't have a straight shot. When it comes to torquing anything down, you definitely want to use the included hex keys. The angle and the leverage you have makes it a lot easier, but these are good for putting things in that don't require a whole lot of tension on them. And that's it. We have the new Hotend installed, and we'll go ahead and get the filament threaded through, fire it up, and give it a test print. So remember back when we went ahead and twisted the nozzle in and then backed it off a quarter turn? The idea there was that we wanted to go ahead and address thermal expansion. So what we're doing now is I preheated the nozzle to 250 degrees, and that should have expanded both ends. So what we're going to do is, now that the ends are both expanded, I'm going to go ahead and use the channel locks to hold the hot block here, and then screw the nozzle in. If we had tightened it up before, what would have happened is the expansion would have crushed the two metal parts together, and I assume they would have flared out or something similar to that. So that's something we're trying to avoid here, and my guess as to why we do this particular step. So I'm going to grab the hot block here gently. I'm not using the paper towels this time. And get my socket set on this nozzle and then give it a turn to tighten it. It's of course near impossible here to do with way too many things in the way. There we go. And there we go. That's tightened on. And again, just because we're going to be printing with higher temperature stuff or filament here, I want to make sure that this is nicely seated, not flared out, and works at 250 C. So that's it. We're installed now. I'm going to load the filament and we're going to try our first print. Now that we have everything installed, we're back up and running again. We've got our extruder primed, or not primed yet, but should be priming here in a second. We've got our bed leveled, and let's see how this new one works. It's pretty quick on the priming. Sort of get more of a bed level view for you here. And I always feel like the JH or the HJ that it draws here, the author's stamp, is sort of an indicator of the accuracy of the print. So let's kind of take a look at how it does that. But so far this is looking like a really solid upgrade. Seeing good performance here. Very clean lines, even temperatures. Here's drawing the initials. And those look very, very, very clean. So we'll wait till it gets to the other side and you can get a better view of this once the head's out of the way. There we go. All right, so now that that's done, we are all ready to print some of the higher temperature, more exotic stuff. I've got a roll of PET G that I'm going to be printing with pretty soon here. Eventually, I'm going to try some of the TPU and see how that goes. One of the mistakes I made when I was doing this is I cut, and I actually cut out of the video, is I had a different sort of extruder feeder block that I had installed. And you can see I've, filed the heck out of this trying to get this to fit. And the first time out, this did not print very well. And it was because I tried to do these two mods at once, which you should never do. And the idler wheel on the other side of the extruder gear was pinned against this just kind of due to a tolerance issue. So that's resolved now. I put the original back in. It's working just fine. I did install the new all-aluminum lever there, and that's working real nicely. Looks nice, a lot less slop in it, and hoping just for some generally cleaner feed to it. So you can see everything printing real nicely there, perfectly clean lines. And yeah, we're going to go ahead and call this a successful print and a successful upgrade. Thanks for watching.